Ollie Sharpe, how are you?
I'm very well, Simon. How are you?
Yeah, I'm terrific. I'm terrific, thank you. And thank you
Good.
for taking the time to join us today. I know how busy you are.
That's right. It's great to be here. It's great to be talking to you with for such a great website and a great cause.
Yeah, well, we're getting there. At Wellity, we want to normalize the conversation around mental health, certainly targeting the sales industry, as you know how pressurized it is.
Mm.
Who else to come to? But, VP of Revenue EMEA at SalesLoft. I see you everywhere. I see you everywhere, but I see the company and the organization everywhere as well. So it must be an incredible time for you.
Yeah, exciting. Very exciting time. And we set up in April last year, and things are going very well. I'm enjoying working for a company that holds its core values at the heart of everything it does, with a great product, and the timing's fantastic. So yeah, couldn't be better.
Good. And I'm joining you in Men's Health Week, which is this week. And also, I know that when we used to see each other at gatherings, we used to give each other a big hug.
We
Um,
do.
not for the foreseeable. How have you been finding this period that we're in?
You mean without the hugs, or just in general? I'm struggling.
More in relation to COVID.
That's why I'm wearing black. The COVID. I mean, it's. I think that it's a strange time for everybody, and there's two words that come to mind: is gratitude and resilience. It's how you handle the actual situation comes down to how resilient you are. But also, I personally, I have to be grateful for what we've got. I live outside London. I've got family here, and I've got a garden. There's a lot of people a lot worse off than me, and so I appreciate what I've got here. Our business is going okay. Obviously, we've had to change a few things in regards to obviously working remotely, but how we keep the culture within the team, how we look after our employees. This has been at the forefront of our minds. But all in all, it's a lot of other people are a lot worse off than us. So I have nothing better to say. Just grateful for what we've got.
Yeah, and I know we're going to go into the management and the structure and everything else that may be changed and how people have become resilient and found themselves during this period. Perhaps we could rewind and start with your career.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Where did it all begin for you?
Right. Well, I left university after doing a graphic design degree, graphic design and business studies, and I went to an interview and realised that I couldn't use a computer. The timing was I did all the drawing and then went to a job doing graphic design with a computer. So I had to come out of that straight away. I went to a job that was advertised as marketing, and it turned out it was door-to-door sales. So I started my career doing 2 years door-to-door sales, which I actually enjoyed until I jumped over someone's wall and tore everything in my ankle. So I had to give that up. That's a short career. I moved into recruitment. So I did 10 years in recruitment. I was recruiting sales professionals, mainly in IT and telecoms. And luckily, at the time I wanted to move on, I got approached by LinkedIn to come and join them in the UK when they were very small. There's about 15 people in the UK when I joined, and it was the only office outside of America. And I joined them as a rep and worked my way up and built teams and led teams at LinkedIn. Then left back in beginning of last year and joined SalesLoft and built them, set them up in EMEA, and still here today and loving it. So yeah, it's been a different career, and I've never planned any move. I've just fallen into jobs, which has been really, really nice.
And you cut your teeth at the front end, didn't you, with door-to-door sales?
Do you know what? I really enjoyed it. I learned so much. You learn a lot. Just even the mentality. You have 100 doors. Every no is a step closer to a yes. And if you let it impact your mindset that you've just had 10 no's, you're not going to sell to the next door. And it's peeing down with rain, it's not going well, and you've got to keep your mentality. So yeah, I did it the hard way, and I've got a lot to be grateful for in the way of doing that. I think it shaped me and how I think.
I always find that it adds to a sales leader's credibility if you started at the bottom. For some reason, you've done the hard yards and you can actually
You
tell
know what
others
it's like.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that it has helped me a lot. It helped me as a salesperson. I mean, when I was at LinkedIn, I was a salesperson for the first 4 or 5 years, and it helped me do what I did. I've always been new business focused. Give me a phone, give me yellow pages, and let me crack on, sort of thing.
And why sales? What's different about sales? I mean, we talk about.
God, no one plans to go into sales.
No, that's right.
It seemed to move. I think for me, I didn't plan to go into sales, but I love sales. And I think one thing that if I look back at what I've loved about sales, it's being able to provide a solution and help someone achieve what they want. And I've realized that's what's changed me from sales into leadership, because that's what I enjoy about leadership. So sales, it was being able to go to somebody and say, yes, I can help you achieve X, Y, and Z. This is how we will do it. I've never seen it as really going in and selling a product. I mean, obviously when you're doing door-to-door, it's a little bit different, but in recruitment, you're helping them find someone to take their business to the next level or something. When you're selling at LinkedIn, it was helping them achieve their goals. So I've realized that's what I enjoy. And as I say, in leadership, it's helping my team and clients achieve what they want to achieve. And that's why I've always loved sales. Don't get me wrong, I do like the winning element of it. I'm not that, I played quite a lot of sport when I was younger, so I do have that competitive streak in me, but that's not what really drives me as much anymore.
In terms of the different streaks that are in you, so to speak, what makes a salesperson different? What are those traits? You said about winning, but I mean, there's also something about being able to communicate, isn't there, and liking to get your message across.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best salespeople are aware, self-aware. Self-awareness is a huge thing, and that shapes them in a lot of ways. Self-awareness in regards to how they communicate with other people, where their gaps are in where they want to, where they need to develop. Even self-awareness of how they're feeling that day. All of it helps as a person. I also like people that are inquisitive, that ask a lot of questions. A lot of people say there's no stupid questions. There are. Obviously, we know there are some stupid questions, but we not to think like that. It's just someone that asks a lot of questions. How do we do this? What do we do this? Why do we do that? That's great. And they're inquisitive with clients, prospects, so they can actually understand more about the business, and that's where they'll provide a solution to their needs. So those kind of things. I mean, work ethic is good, but I like to, when I'm recruiting, I like to try strip back experience as much as possible. They must have some sales experience. It's probably going to be technology, and maybe sold this kind of thing where they educate. But then the primary focus is on culture, making sure we're getting the culture fit, but then it's around being inquisitive, making sure that they're asking the right questions at interview, and wanting to develop. You can't develop someone that doesn't want to develop. So they're the three things I really look for when interviewing.
You're an incredibly popular part of the market, obviously tech, and people might think that you need a back catalogue and a huge resume to be able to join you. It's so interesting just to hear you. When I'm sitting, I mean, I've always enjoyed your company, and we talk about lots of other stuff apart from this, but it's very interesting that when you're onboarding and seeing people, you're looking for something quite different to what they think you might be looking for. Is that?
Yeah, completely. I worked out the things I can't do without. Right. And that is your sales experience, and it's probably 2 years plus or whatever, depending on the level. And it's understanding the role. And I mean, we sell to sales leaders, obviously, and finding someone that's sold to a sales leader is hard, but finding someone that's sold into a CFO might find that transition hard. So you've got to find out if they've got the ability to change. So it's all around the ability, not just what is on paper. You miss a hell of a lot of people, good people, if you purely look at what's on their CV. But I'm always culture first when I interview. If someone can come and join me and hit 200% of target, but they're going to upset someone in the team, I won't be interested.
No, because it can disrupt it from within, can't it?
Yep.
One of the things that we talk about a lot is you say that salespeople rely on how they're feeling that day. We're human, like everyone else. We have emotions, so we go up and down, and our, mental health or our state or our well-being can go up and down. But we always strive for top performance. So in essence, that we don't allow that to go up and down with how we feel. So therefore, when we're down, the gulf between where we are and where we need to be to hit number, or where we think we need to be to show how we're performing to our peers and our bosses, it can be a big leap. And I think that's how I define the difference with salespeople in a way. You really have to keep lifting yourself up and pulling yourself back up.
You're right. And I think in my view, a lot of leaders feel they've got to be that superhero that's always at the peak and everything. And I think that this is where self-awareness comes in for leaders and for reps, because, and one thing we do around this is we do a MEPS check-in, so mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual check-in, and it comes from Schwartz and Law's performance pyramid. The rituals you put in place to be always at your peak performance. And so we will have a team meeting, and we'll think about ourselves, where we are mentally, emotionally, physically, and spiritually, because we know that if something is missing across any of those 4 areas, then we're not at our peak performance, and it's worth taking the time out. In their book, they show loads of people they've worked with that have got them to think differently, to make sure instead of working 8 till 8 every day and sort of plateauing, there's people that they've got to 2 days a week to finish at 4 so they can go to the gym, because the physical side is not being, physical needs are not being met as they should be. So it's beneficial for us to take the time out from work to make sure we're looking after ourselves, because we will be more efficient when we're in the office. So that's where someone that is self-aware as a salesperson, if they're not getting enough sleep, if they're stressed and all these kind of things, they should be able to hopefully look inside themselves to say, okay, I'm not my best because of this. I'm going to take some time out and look after myself, and that will stop burnout and get me back to peak performance.
And it's the ability to look up to your sales leader, to first have the honesty to be able to talk about that without fearing retribution or anything coming back to you like, no, you can't, you haven't done this, you haven't done that. I only heard a podcast with you this morning. I heard a brief snippet of one. And what you were saying was, in adversity, it doesn't have to be just the huge life issues. It could be losing a deal. Like, it could be something small that breaks the camel's back. And it's what you said in a good way was that you don't let someone off the hook completely and go, no, it's all fine, because that's actually not authentic. They might want the training and the nurture to be able to realize that you've realized it, but you also accept it. How do you handle that especially in this time, when your team come to you?
I mean, one thing that I think I learned early days in leadership is showing resilience. If you can't show resilience, you can't teach resilience, and you can't sort of impact the people around you. And what I wanted to be was the calm person, the person that when the shit hits the fan or when things are great is not an extreme. And I learned that from another leader, that just to keep within this sort of the midpoint where you don't go to these extremes, and that can help other people understand that. But at the same time, when something goes wrong, there's 2 things. And Dr. Steve Bull, the sports psychologist, when he works people, when adversity happens, he helps them regain their confidence, but he also talks about what they can learn from that situation. And they're the 2 key things. So having the conversation to say, okay, that's bad, we've lost it. Okay, we understand that. Is there anything we can currently do to actually turn that around, do you think? Okay, well, if we can't, what can we do moving forward to stop this happening again? So you're just taking it as, and you find it in all walks of life. I mean, even in parenting, it's you're having a child. If something bad happens, how you react to that is going to impact whether they build their resilience or not. So if my daughter, something bad happens, it's not about, oh, it's okay, let's go buy you a meal. And it's not about, that's terrible, go to your room. It's okay, well, what can we learn from it? What can you do to change it now? And what should we do moving forward? So I think it's just having that pattern of owning it and partnering them in any situation. So help them own the situation and not run away from it, not get their heads too far into it, but partner them to come out of it and move forward.
It's actually those lessons that you would try and teach a child. They're exactly the same as that methodology is exactly the same when you're talking to anyone of any age, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
Embracing, encouraging, telling them where they've done wrong, and because you want them to improve. And I suppose a good leader will be one of the ones where your employees know that you're coming at it with authenticity.
Yeah, completely. There's no blame in there. I mean, it's hard to have the conversation of It's your words. Again, it's self-awareness. Going in there going, right, how did you mess this up is different to say, okay, what do you think you did that could have impacted this that we won't do again? So being thoughtful in your words is how you address the situation is very important. And who knows, if I carry on in leadership, I might end up as a good parent.
Yeah, just do it in reverse. I know that talking as if it's to a child is such a big thing, because one of the best pieces of advice I had throughout, the periods that I've had to show resilience in my life was that you should actually talk to yourself a bit like a child as well. And I will elaborate on that. If a child comes to you with a painting and it's, we all know it's probably awful. It comes from a good place. And if you said, no, that's really bad, they wouldn't come to you again and they'd give up painting. In the same way, I suppose, if people come to you with a problem or resilience, it's nice to embrace it. And the inner critic in us, like my self-talk was pretty loud, actually. So it was very negative at one point in my life. So it'd be chipping away. And then someone said to me, why don't you talk to yourself like you were a 5-year-old child? And would you tell a 5-year-old child you're rubbish? Would you tell each other, oh, I can't believe you haven't been for a run today, you're not very good? No, you'd say, right, that's fine, you haven't been for a run today. Well, let's perhaps do a longer one tomorrow. It probably means you're tired. Let's go for an early night.
Yeah.
And suddenly it changes your whole perspective on.
I agree. There was a post recently that I saw that it was saying that you speak to yourself, i.e. the voice in your head, more than you speak to anyone else. And I mean, most people do. You can't guarantee for everybody, but it's and that's important. And a lot of it is being forgiving, is of yourself. It's understanding we all make mistakes. It doesn't matter as long as you learn from them. It doesn't really matter.
Exactly. And some of the points that we're trying to get across, mental health is very much in the newspapers at the moment. I mean, in the headlines, it's still, in my experience, when I speak to everyone, tarnished as if it's a bit fluffy, as if it's slippers and fruit and maybe holistic therapies and a bit of yoga at lunchtime, which not many people take up. How do you think that's changing? Do you think it needs to change? And how do you think it's changing? And do you think there's enough emphasis on the bottom line that wellbeing can increase profitability of an organization?
It's a strange one, because I think this comes down to all of our views on the politics in a way, not politics as in government politics, but I do think it's changing. I think that there's an air of companies just feeling they should do it because there's a lot of people talking about it. I also feel that there's the bottom line should be a byproduct. It shouldn't be the reason why people do it, in my view. And I can't impact how the CEO of a large company thinks. I chose my job after leaving LinkedIn on the company that looked after its employees the best, who built the best culture. And what it was Carl Porter, when he was talking, I was watching an interview, and he mentioned that when somebody goes on maternity or paternity leave, they get 12 weeks worth of a cleaner, 12 weeks worth of food, and 12 months worth of nappies or diapers, as he would say. And as soon as I heard that, my thought, and I'm not having any more kids, but my first thought was, this is the company for me, because I could see they cared. And I think this is what it comes down to. It's the mental well-being of your employees should be because you care about your employees. It shouldn't be because, oh, you can raise profit by another 2% if you actually give them a bit of meditation at lunchtime. I disagree with that. So there is the bottom line to it, and that is just another reason to do it, but it shouldn't be the priority. Coming back to what you said, yes, I do believe it's changing. I think there's some companies are stuck in what used to be, but there's a lot of people doing a really good job out there to talk about it. And talking is the first step. I mean, acknowledging it's there is the first step, and then talking about it, I think, is the second. And people have big battles on their hand. I've spoken to people when I was advising this other company that have an app around well-being. And you've got these people that want their business to change, but they're in a role that isn't able to impact to get budget to make the change. So it's growing. There's a long way to go for us. And it is a lot around the understanding. I think that just even the word mental on its own had so many bad connotations to it in the past that Then they're going, well, what's well-being and all of these kind of things. And people are starting to understand that mental well-being is like going to the gym. I know gym helps mental well-being, but it is more in the just keeping healthy within our heads. So yeah, I mean, we've got a long way to go, but I think it's changing, and I hope it continues to change because it's important.
Yeah, and it's that language around mental health, exactly like you just said. I just beamed from ear to ear because, you know, we still have, when I was young, people used to throw mental around the playground like an insult, you know, if you were mental. Now we've got it in the very diagnosis of what you're meant to actually be laying your, you know, bearing your soul to tell everyone, I'm mental. And also, if I asked you, Ollie, tell everyone about you being mental, tell everyone about mental. No, whoa, where is this going? Hang on, whoa. And I'm not asking you, by the way. But if I repositioned that question and said, look, Ollie, you've got to the top of your game. You must have had sacrifice. You work in an industry of burnout and everything else, but you have got to the top. There must have been time in your life when you had to face resilience, when your back was against the wall. We've only got to look at recession or COVID or something else. And plus, we're all human, so we have life's things that it chucks at us. Tell us about how you got through it. Tell us about what worked for you, and inspire others to learn from your journey. It's the same question, isn't it, in a way, but it's using far more acceptable.
It is. And I've spoken about that area quite a lot. And it is the resilience, really resilience to me is about how I've kept my mental well-being at a positive level through hard times. Resilience helps you keep your mental well-being, really. So yeah, it's a funny, strange area that I think people don't fully understand exactly what it means yet. And so this is where we've got to make a lot more changes.
Yeah, and I think COVID might well highlight that because look, we're in each other's living rooms at the moment. And, you know, I've been in bedrooms, I've been in garden sheds. and with work. No, I'm joking. And so I think there's a general acceptance that we're, heaven forbid, we're all normal now, aren't we?
Yeah, yes. But I mean, I do think I always hope that there's positive comes out of COVID. And when I was talking to my wife the other day, we were on a dog walk and we were talking about things seem to be getting a little bit closer, not nearly back to normal, but they've just edged a little bit. And part of me was quite happy with what we've got. And I was like, oh, okay, how do I feel about going back to normal? Because I know a lot of people will actually suffer anxiety because they've got used to being at home. And that will be brought on by COVID. But I do think that when shit happens, it builds our resilience. So people will look back at this, and COVID will be the one thing, hopefully, that it has built people's resilience. They know they can cope with difficult situations, whether it's having to work from home, having to be on Zoom every day, or whether it's not going out of the house. But hopefully it builds people's resilience moving forward. And I think there will be some impact on people's mental well-being, and I hope that that's not too big, and I hope people can help themselves or get help for that. But there's always going to be a positive coming out of it as well.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a hangover to COVID. I generally do, because we don't know the hangover because we're still in it, I suppose. I experienced it a couple of days ago, actually. I called a meeting. I mean, I don't think there's two harder people working than us, but I called a meeting at the office, and everyone really wanted to, everyone that was involved with Wellity, and we all went in. And I said, right, we're going to do a day here. And honestly, it was a really bizarre feeling to think I've got to spend 8-9 hours in that environment. And it felt really good on the build up. We're all going to go in, we're going to meet each other. And we said hello. It was lovely. We spent a lot of time talking about what effectively is, has been this time off. But then you think, right, but I quite enjoyed working in my shorts, or I feel like a ham sandwich now, or a walk around the block, or a cup of coffee or something else. And you sort of have that stripped away from you. And how I word it is, we've all been kind of the MD of our own environment for 3 or 4 months. And then you go, it's not so much the physical bricks and mortar, but you're going somewhere where you feel as if you have to be there, even if you wanted to go. It's sort of stripped from you slightly. Yeah,
I think, I found it easier to put exercise into my daily habits. A lot easier. I mean, I'm not the best. I hate going to the gym. I don't actually enjoy running, but I've been able, I don't know what I do.
I won't ask you what you have been doing.
I joined a tennis club, which I haven't played since I was 18, but I found it easier to put it into my day. And it got me thinking, is before going back, what an idea is to actually get people to really think about over the last 3 months which part of their job they will like to keep and which bits they would miss if we went straight back to normal life, and which bits they don't like. So, and I think that would help us understand, because if people are saying, well, the fact that I'm doing exercise before I work, then let's think about how we incorporate that into our day and make sure that people are doing that, because again, it's part of that next bit that is going to make them more effective when they are in work.
Yeah, and a lot of this comes down to trust and culture, doesn't it? Now, I know culture you're big on. Do you think there's going to be an issue around trust if we all learn that we can work from home now? You don't. How is the management style?
I mean, I think it comes down to who the leader is, what the company is, what the employees are. It's too hard to answer a question. I think that I've been very pleased with our results while this has been happening. What we have done is we have a regular daily check-in at 9 a.m. every day, and we talk about what key wins from yesterday and what our goals are today, sort of thing. But part of that, we also say what we've done for ourselves in the last 24 hours. Brilliant. Whether that is I've baked something, I've learned something, I've played whatever it is. So we're sort of keeping accountable to those bits. But it's hard to say about trust. I trust my people. Everybody that works for me, I think part of when I recruited them, I sort of made it clear, this is a startup. Shit's gonna happen, and you're gonna be expected to actually do things under your own volition, sort of thing. I won't be watching over you, and I can't micromanage you. So it's your choice whether this role is right for you. So that's built my trust in them anyway.
Do you think, you've just hit on a good point, we both know startups. Do you think there's a different person that is in, that can tailor themselves to a startup that maybe, and a different person that is in a big enterprise organization with the full support mechanism?
As a person in the role, yeah. I mean, if you're talking about mental well-being, it's hard to answer, but LinkedIn got too big for me that I realized, I read the book, The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari, which is absolutely phenomenal. And I learned a lot about myself that made me realize I wasn't doing the things that gave me a purpose in the work environment. And I got out. I realized what I used to enjoy when I was at LinkedIn when they were smaller, and then came and found it at SalesLoft. And it's all about the creativity side for me. So yeah, it made me realize I'm not a big company person.
No, and I think there's something about our characters, which is you like to feel every bump of the road. That's what throws you off course a bit, and you have the pendulum swings, so you can deal with a bit of adversity and uncertainty, but equally you get that surge of adrenaline almost when it really something really comes off. And you mentioned your results last month. I mean, it must be great when that happens, but that's because you're feeling every bump of that road.
Yeah. I mean, you take the rough with the smooth, and that's what it is, and that's what startup life is. It's better than looking at spreadsheets and maintaining a status quo. I'd rather go and break something and see how it works and build it again.
Yeah. One of the interesting things that we're finding is that the sales profession is becoming more professional. I liken it to when we see the footballers of the 70s and 80s, and then we got Gaza and all, and they're boozing it during the week. And sales was very much, perhaps in your door-to-door days, sales was very much a sort of booze, banter and burnout culture. I see it change. Do you see that changing at all with new generations coming through?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it is changing. It hasn't changed. I think there's a lot of organizations and individuals that are still very old school, should we say, that it's however you hit target, and if you don't hit target 3 months in a row, you're out, and those kind of things. I do think there's organizations like the Association of Professional Sales, Andy Hoff and those guys, and also Institute of Sales and Marketing, Sales Management, that are doing some good work to change the face of sales as an industry and as a profession. I mean, Andy Hoff and the APS, they're looking to put accreditations in place so that the profession becomes more, it's tracked better. We know who's doing the good things and who's doing the bad things. And I think things like that will help. I do also think that it's changed in a big way. I think it was very much a man's place before, and I don't agree with that one bit. I think it's changed so much that you could even say that the actual traits that are needed now are more feminine traits. It's more about building trust and providing a solution rather than trying to hit a target and work all day. So I'm saying females can't do that, but natural traits from a female tend to be more aligned to that. So I do think that the industry is changing, and I hope it continues to. I think that there's certain areas that need a lot of backing that should change the diversity, and that's not just male and female diversity, but all diversity within the sales arena. It's terrible, and we should all be helping that alongside the mental wellbeing side.
Yeah, I agree. And when we look at these big kickoffs, you know, when you go away for 3 days, it may be LA or wherever, or Barcelona, and you just think, well, it's full on for those 3 or 4 days, and it's all out drinking and meetings and back to back, and there's something incredibly unhealthy. Even I try and do 3 or 4 days in London, staying over at hotels, and it's trying not to forget that health and well-being aspect. And there might be people who want to go to bed at 9 o'clock. They don't want to be up till 3 in the morning, actually, but equally they'll be up at 6 o'clock in the morning doing their, you know, group run or a yoga or something else. And I think it's just being aware that this industry is, there are more parts to this industry when we're onboarding.
I agree, and I think that diversity of team around diversity of thought and understanding, and the inclusion and belonging side, where everyone should feel welcome. Everyone's different, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, whether you like drinking or not. It now a leader's role is to create that culture where everyone is heard, everyone is thought of, everyone feels like they belong. And that's a big thing, especially when the more diverse we get. I know that when I built the team at SalesLoft, my thoughts were, let's go with people that are culture fit / culture add. That's it. It has to be the right skills that can do the job, and then let's try and make it as diverse as possible, so that everyone brings something different, something new to the table. And there's diversity of thought, but diversity of character within the team. And we went to Atlanta the second week for onboarding, and they all came back going, everyone is so different, but we all get on fantastically as a team. And to me, that's a big tick in the box. That's what you want to achieve.
And you've taken my next question, which was, what is the culture that you try and instill? You've answered it perfectly without me even answering. So
good. I mean, it's to me, it's one of fun. It's one where it's been strange because we have onboarded some new team members through COVID, and I was a little bit concerned, but there was one said on stand up the other day, I feel more welcome in 3 weeks, even though I've not actually met any of you face to face, than I've ever felt at a company. And that meant a lot, a hell of a lot, because if we can do that while we're remote, then there's a strong culture. And there's people on the stand up just going, I miss you guys. Can we meet up and stuff? It's nice to see that the culture is there, and I don't need to be there. I don't need to play a part. I can let them get on. The culture remains.
And that's part of the learnings, isn't it? Like you said earlier, let's take learnings. We don't have to go straight back to how it was. We don't have to suddenly create a new, it sort of is what it is. And like you said, it's about being aware of those bits that you can pull out, those bits that have worked through this unprecedented time that we wouldn't have done by choice, but actually you think, okay, well, I'm fairly glad that happened because of this reason, because it pulled that out. And maybe that is, I mean, how hard do you have to justify now a 3-hour commute for an hour and a half meeting?
It seems ridiculous, doesn't it? It's I do think that I think this will have speeded a lot up. I think that people will now think twice about getting on a plane, and I mean, let's hope it actually impacts the world properly. The carbon emissions and everything will go down, but I do think people will think differently going forward, and I think that it may have speeded up some processes that probably wouldn't have happened for another 10 years plus if this didn't happen, which is a good thing. I mean, it's great for companies like Zoom and things, but it's also good for hopefully us as individuals. I've got a feeling people will be more thoughtful around work-life balance when this is over. And it's either because they've missed going out or they've enjoyed being at home. Either way, I think it will make them think differently.
And what have you enjoyed then about this period? I mean, where you mentioned about sport, being at home.
I've enjoyed a lot. I mean, I miss the team. I miss I'm going to say I miss going for a beer with the team and stuff like that. What I've loved is spending more time with the family. I go out of this door here and at 5 o'clock or whatever, and I am there. I don't have to have that journey home. I have enjoyed. I feel like we're doing more of our own cooking. We're actually cooking to enjoy a meal rather than just because we've just got in and we just need to eat something. Started growing more flowers and herbs in the back garden, just doing things properly. It seems like, and shopping at the local butchers rather than going into Sainsbury's and all of these kind of things. There's so much that I've enjoyed through it that I hope people don't forget about those positives that we've sort of learned.
Yeah, it's like we've all got 4 burners under us, and I don't know what those 4 burners are, but one of them is well-being and health and well-being, and when all the others are going, say if you've just got work, and one burner's on full capacity, but the others aren't, you're going in all sorts of directions. But it seems to me that you've got yours lit. I do want to ask you about authenticity as a leader, because I've heard you do keynotes on the various sales circuits that we're both on. What is the definition of bear in mind, we are talking, both of us, candidly about cooking, gardening, well-being. I mean, strong. What's the definition?
I mentioned beer.
Yes, and that's another thing, right? Wellity normalizes the conversation around well-being and mental health. It doesn't mean that you have to go teetotal. Having a beer with people you like, we've had many in the past, is a good thing. Because
the emotional bit of it, it's the ritual you should put in place of the things you enjoy, and if you're not doing it, you're not at your peak performance. Sorry, going back to your question, I did take you off lead there.
We went on to beer, don't worry, it's fine.
About beer. Sorry, I took you away. You were asking about authenticity.
Yeah, and strength, and what is strong now as a leader?
I think strength is, in a way, not a good word, because I think it gives us this idea that we have to be strong. To me, strength comes more in I feel someone is strong if they can own up, and if they can be grateful, and they can be open and honest. That is someone, to me, that is stronger than somebody that is strong. So I think it's one of those words that can be very ambiguous. To me, strength comes with openness and stuff, rather than strength of being man up, hold it all in. That's bullshit in my view. Authenticity, I think that it's purely, to me, and I always wonder about this, because when I interview people, I'm really open with them. I mean, I talk about anything, and I'll talk about my expectations, I'll talk about my experience, I'll talk about what's made me who I am in regards to my wife having cancer in the past and these kind of things. And I often, after an interview, I'll think, do they think I've just said that as a sales ploy, or do they feel I'm authentic? And I think that it's got to come from the heart. And I think when I'm talking to my team, I'm very open with them. And when we do the MEPS check-in, I will be open about my feelings. And it takes time to realize you can try to be authentic, but that's not really being authentic. I think just being open and honest and setting the standard. To me, leaders have got to lead from the front. And if I can be as open as I can create that culture and environment that others can be open to. And I think that's important. And that only comes with authenticity, that I can do it because I respect my team and I trust them with with my true feelings. And it's about me being able to say, I'm not in the best mood today because of X. And I can do that. And that, to me, shows strength. To others, it probably shows complete weakness, but that's where we differ.
Yeah. And Ollie, you mentioned a time where you perhaps had adversity yourself and had to show resilience without going into detail. Where did it sort of take you, or how did you get out of it? Any triggers? What helped you in the end that might inspire others?
So it was, I did a talk on this recently at work, and I did one at LinkedIn as well. And I've had a lot of shit happen basically, and it's with my daughter, my wife, and lots of things. And the main one was when my wife was diagnosed with cancer. This was about 5 years ago, and it was a really tough time for us. But I remember one thing that really stands out, and I've mentioned this so many times, was my manager at the time, Dan Dackham, when I told him, because it's a massive blow, just said that your wife is your priority. She's the one that you need to look after. Once you've looked at when she's all right, once you make sure she's all right, then it's the family, it's your kids that you need to think about. And then once you know they're all right, it's yourself that you need to look after and make sure you're all right. And then if you have any time left, feel free to do some work. And it was brilliant. And it stuck with me to this day that if someone is having relationship problems, if somebody is having anything happening outside of work, they're not going to be at the best. They're better taking a day off and going to sort out whatever issue. I mean, often a day isn't what's going to sort it, but they're better being able to be open about it, and you enable them or allow them to go and do what they can to sort their problem out, and they'll come back a lot more committed and better at what they're doing. And that helped me a lot. I learned a lot. I think we all take a role. I think that my wife is a counsellor, and she always drills into me that we all have choices. And one of the choices we have is how we handle situations, whether you become a victim or whether you, and I'm not saying that people always choose to be a victim. There is it's not that simple, but if you can have that mindset when something happens of, okay, well, how do I want to be? How do I want to react from this? It's a big learning. And to be honest with you, all those things the bad things that happened also gave me this sort of mentality that if I don't hit target, there's bigger things in life. And I know I shouldn't say that as a sales leader, because everything should be around hitting target and succeeding. But let's face it, there's a lot bigger things in life than hitting a sales number. Work is purely something I do so I can enjoy life. And if I can also enjoy what I do at work, then it makes my life a hell of a lot better when I do. So that's what I learned from the monk who sold his Ferrari, that if you can enjoy, Jeff Weiner always used to say, happiness is looking forward to going to work and looking forward to going home. And if you can achieve that, that's a good place.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, firstly, thank you for sharing your experience. I really appreciate that, and the learnings that you took from it. And then you say, it's not all about, you felt slightly guilty about saying, well, you're not trying to go for your quota all the time. I think what you are saying is your quota will come if you look after yourself. If you look after yourself first, it will come. It has done, because you've proved it. And I love your outlook. And I think if we have more leaders that, create happiness within their teams, the number will just keep going up. I think you're doing it exactly the right way.
Yeah, there's a fantastic book around happiness called The Happiness Advantage by Sean Aker. And he starts the book by saying that most people think that successful people are happy, but science shows that happy people are successeful.
Yes, that's what I was getting at in my garbled way.
Fantastic book. And even so much as they did some research from these logbooks, diaries of these nuns from years and years ago around health and career. I mean, career around nuns is a bit strange because I don't know how much career there is, but they put them into different buckets about how positive the words were that they were talking about in their diaries, so they could get an idea of their mentality around positivity and happiness. And the ones that were in the fourth bucket, i.e. the most positive, were the ones that lived the longest and got furthest in the nunnery, in the nun career. I don't know what that is, but the ones that actually were the most negative were the ones that died first. So there is direct correlation between happiness, success, and health.
Yeah, I completely agree. Look, on that subject, I just want to ask you, before we start to bring it to an end, because we had some invaluable information in this, what is your definition of well-being?
I mean, that is a really tough one to answer. I think that well-being, so if we're talking about mental well-being, I would say it is just making sure that you're looking after yourself, that you can think clearly and perform at the level you want. not always at the best. I mean, best that you want to be doing.
It's around sort of contentment, and what you've alluded to is that their life is broader than one thing. Like, it's almost built on a bigger foundation, and you can get higher peaks if you have a bigger foundation like that. Which is what I've heard today. And what are the red flags, do you think, when you talk about mental health? What are the things that, and I've got my own, and someone said the other day, if they haven't made their bed in the morning, that's a little bit of a red flag to them, that they are not on their game, and it may be having another glass at night or whatever it is. What are the red flags that you look out to ensure that your well-being state is kept at a level?
Do you know what, I've changed a lot as a person from having a wife that is a counsellor. So we regularly go on dog walks, and I learn a lot about myself. And I think that it's a very big area, but I think it's very important is the awareness piece that we alluded to, that we talked about earlier, because I believe with myself, I'm now at a stage that if I feel down, cross, impatient or anything like that, I first of all try to understand why I feel like that. Because I'm not, and it may be someone has made me feel like that, but that's probably not why I feel like that. There's probably something in me, whether I'm tired, hungry, or something else has happened that has frustrated me. But I find it comes out maybe when I speak to a team member, a family member, or hear something, but that's probably not the root cause. So I try and understand really what's underneath my emotions and feelings for me to actually work out what has impacted it, and try learn why it's impacted it. So I've learned a lot about myself of why I'm impatient and what makes me impatient. And then once you know it, it's you can start working on it. So it's awareness and really wanting to improve as a person. I want to develop in every way I can. So that's one of it. One thing that I learned recently that I was talking to my wife about was it's the feeling of being disorganized. That is one of the things that impacts my mental well-being. That's when a team member can say something and I feel frustrated. It's not because what they've said, it's because I've not felt organized in something else, and I've just been a little bit on edge that has made me a little bit stressed. So I did David Allen's Getting Things Done years and years ago, and I still use it. But then if I'm going to do a presentation, an event, I feel a little bit uneasy until I've got the basic structure of that presentation down. And I know that. And so it's knowing it, the awareness of it is really important to be able to help yourself overcome it and stop the stress happening. It's with stress, in Harvard Business Review I was reading, stress is there. Once you can acknowledge it and understand it, it moves it to the different part of your brain that moves it from the chimp paradox into the more logic side of your brain, and you can actually work on it. So acknowledgement and awareness are the first things we should look at when any stress happens, to understand it.
God, I was relating to everything you said then. I was writing stuff down because, like you, I get frustrated when I've got a job to do. And it might be a really simple job, but for some reason it just keeps getting put off and I never get round to it, and it just niggles and niggles and niggles. And then someone said action conquers fear. And it is, just start it. Even that email, just put "Dear Ollie," and then think, right, put "Dear Ollie," right? And it starts, doesn't it? And sometimes we have an inner critic that almost limits us. And with self-limit was a huge thing with me. My inner critic was loud, and still is, to a point where I've got my own methods to overcome it. But yeah, it's that, when you go back to you said that you didn't maybe have a good answer for well-being. I think you've just done it, because from what I can gather, it is awareness. You can't be good at everything, but it's being aware where the gaps are that you can kind of plug into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And when you talk about starting something, when I did the Getting Things Done, he referred to, with Dave Allen, he referred to tidying your sock drawer. And it's amazing. And it's really weird, because if you can imagine that feeling when you've tidied your sock drawer, that's a good feeling. Yeah. And all you've done is tidy your sock drawer. I mean, it's like our loft is a shit show. And if I tidy a little bit of that, it's still good. It's good. It's a positive positive thing in my mind and my mood just by doing these little things. So yeah, it's important.
It was bizarre. At the weekend, I did my bathroom. Now, that's quite a big thing for me. I mean, top to bottom, everything. And it's given me one of the best feelings. That shows you what a sad life I lead, doesn't it? But everything's clean and sparkling. Yeah, enjoy going in there. No, I don't know where this conversation's going. Right. So, Ollie, to wrap up, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure. I know how busy you are. And so if you could get from your own life, any adversity that you've all faced yourself or a family, from your career, from the sales industry as a whole, from everything that you've learned, from your senior leadership positions, what would be your one takeaway to people for life and business as a whole?
It's kindness is the one thing, I think, and that's not as just as simple as it sounds. I think that it's, if you want me to expand on that, I've got my jobs through my network every time, and I've always tried to not treat, I know this isn't, I mean, it's an element of kindness, but I've not treated anybody different, whether they are a lot more junior than me or a lot more senior than me. Then they're all the same people. I always think, okay, well, they may be in their first day of the job, but they may go to a company that I want to go to in the future. And I've always thought that if everyone is kind to everyone around them in their work environment, it will make a big difference. I also feel that kindness to ourselves, and this is what we were talking about earlier, about accepting ourselves. So being kind to yourself, to me, is about knowing, and it sort of contradicts growth mindset, which I am a believer in growth mindset, but at the same time, we can't always be good at something, and some things we don't even care whether we're good at. So it's being kind to yourself to understand, yeah, we mess up. Yeah, we may not be better, as good at something. And also random kindness. I think that when I was at LinkedIn, we used to do in-days, and one of the best in-days I ever did was acts of random kindness, where we got a preloaded credit card and we could do anything with it. And it was 50 quid. And we went out, we bought a 92-year-old man shopping in Sainsbury's. We bought a heavily pregnant lady a book for her, because she was looking at books in W.H. Smith for her unborn child. That was one of the best feelings ever. And that kind of feeling in yourself makes a big difference. It impacts our own mental well-being, and it's not about, oh, look how great I am. You just have a good feeling about you. So kindness, to me, is a huge thing that can help us all get along and progress our own careers at the same time.
Well, that was a fantastic answer. So thank you very much. What's come across very clearly is that it's not all about taking, it's about giving, which opens yourself up to so much more. And in the conversation that we had before this, we were talking about kindness as well, which is talking to yourself almost like a 5-year-old child, and with that respect that you would give them, because you quite rightly said you talk to yourself more than you talk to anyone else. So talk to them with a nice, in a nice way. Look, Ollie Sharpe, I very, very much look forward to giving you a hug. It seems like
I'll be waiting for the hug. I'll be waiting for the hug, mate. And I'll be spotting up your bathroom as well.
Yeah, that's right. Bathroom and hugs. I've got a name for this already. Right, brilliant. But I'll let you get on your day. Your advice has been invaluable, and I can't thank you enough.
Thank you for inviting me on it. It's been great, Simon. Thank you.
That's a pleasure. Look, is there anything else you would like to add before we wrap up?
No, I'm good. Just appreciate you inviting me on and being able to share my views. Okay,
and I know as well as everyone else that if you reach out, you do come back to people. Ollie, where can they find you?
LinkedIn.
Yeah, knew you were going to say that. Ollie Sharpe, thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Simon.